It was chicken cordon bleu that night. Melissa always made it when we had guests. Her mother sat at one end of the table, trying to keep her wine from spilling each time the dog brushed her chair. I sat at the other, carving meat I'd bought and cooked, for a family that had stopped acknowledging I existed. The table was long, wider than it needed to be for 4 people. We'd bought it when we first moved into the Portland house, when the dream of together still meant something. When Melissa told me, back then, that she needed space for future holidays, I believed her. I believed in the idea that we would grow into this, the family, the house, the name on the mailbox that was mine, even if no one ever said it out loud. Noah had grown tall over the years, taller than me now, 18, confident, already wearing his father's smirk. That calculated kind of grin that says, I know more than I'm telling you. He cut into his food without looking up, napkin tucked into the collar of a branded sweatshirt I didn't buy. Then he said it. Just so we're clear, Noah began, voice casual like a weather report. Any real decisions go through my dad now. That's what Mom and I agreed on. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just kept eating. Melissa paused, just for a beat, then dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin. The sauce came out nice, she said, speaking to her mother, not me. Don't you think? Her mother nodded, murmured something forgettable. And that was it. No disagreement, no correction, not even a raised eyebrow. Noah had just redrawn the family hierarchy in front of me, and Melissa adjusted her napkin like it was a menu choice, not a declaration. Like she had been waiting for this moment. Not to say it, but to stop pretending. I didn't speak. I didn't challenge. I didn't flinch. What would have been the point? If you argue at that table, you look petty. If you protest, they call it anger. If you ask for clarity, you're accused of creating drama. So I recorded. Not with a phone. With memory. With stillness. Because sometimes silence isn't submission. Sometimes it's documentation. Melissa didn't look at me once for the rest of the meal. She asked her mother about church, about the neighbor's new dog, about summer plans in vague terms that somehow never included me. Not directly. Noah spoke about a potential trip to Arizona. Dad might take me, he said. Not my dad. Just Dad. As if there were only one. As if the man who drifted in and out of his life for birthdays and car rides had suddenly grown roots while I slept. They laughed at something his grandmother said. Something about sunscreen and desert heat, and I sat there, nodding like a man who belonged. I smiled when they looked my way, even though they rarely did. I refilled water glasses, passed the bread, pretended this was still my house, my role, my table. But I knew. Something had shifted. Not in that moment. The shift had already happened. This was just the unveiling. And you know what made it worse? It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. There were no insults, no raised voices, no open warfare. It was polite. It was clean. It was surgical. That's the most dangerous kind of betrayal, the kind that wears a smile. After dessert, a store-bought cheesecake Melissa had cut into perfect triangles. Noah offered to help with dishes. He carried one plate, left the rest. Melissa told him to go relax, that he must be tired from all that thinking. He laughed. That smug little laugh that boys inherit from absent fathers who still get praised for showing up once a season. He vanished into his room. Melissa wiped down the counter without a word. Her mother left early. Some excuse about driving in the dark. And then it was just us. Just the hum of the fridge. The quiet tension of a house pretending everything was normal. I stood at the sink for a while, rinsing a dish that was already clean. I listened to the silence behind me. I waited for Melissa to say something. Anything. But nothing came. She didn't explain. She didn't soften. She didn't even acknowledge what had happened. That's when I understood. This wasn't new for her. She'd known about the decision, the reassignment of power. She had agreed. Whether actively or by silence, it made no difference. She didn't defend me at that table because she didn't need to. In her eyes, there was nothing left to defend. I dried my hands on a dish towel I'd bought myself. A Christmas set. Red, white, and gold. Still crisp from underuse. Still mine. Then I walked out of the kitchen and upstairs to my office. though even the word "my" felt dishonest now. Everything in that house had my name on it except the people. I closed the door quietly behind me, sat at the desk, let the overhead light flicker once before I reached for the switch and shut it off. I didn't cry. That part of me had been burned out long ago. Back when Noah first started calling me man instead of dad. Back when Melissa stopped finishing her sentences if they started with, "I appreciate." No, I didn't cry. I reflected. I let the silence speak. Let the walls whisper the truth I had refused to hear for too long. For years I had carried them, Melissa and Noah, like a man carrying debt. Quietly, without fanfare. Every holiday, every meal, every emergency, every decision. Processed, solved, paid for by me. And not because I was asked. Because I believed that's what love was. That's what being a father meant. I was wrong. That night at the dinner table, when Noah declared his allegiance and Melissa looked away, that was the return on my investment. Not resentment. Not open hatred. Something worse. Indifference. And indifference is how empires fall. It was the way Melissa hadn't flinched that gutted me. That calm, composed acceptance. That unspoken confirmation that I was no longer part of the plan. Like she had been waiting for Noah to say it first so she wouldn't have to. I was a convenience. I was a placeholder until the real father reclaimed his place. Not with responsibility, but with presence. The occasional call. The promise of a trip. The myth of biological closeness that erased years of labor in an instant. Melissa never said I was disposable. She didn't have to. She set the table. She served the meal. She laughed at the jokes. She avoided my eyes. And that told me everything I needed to know. I didn't sleep that night. Melissa came to bed late. I heard her steps on the stairs, the quiet rustle of her blouse coming off in the hallway, the bathroom light flicking off behind her like a door slamming without a sound. When she slipped into the covers beside me, I kept my eyes shut. She didn't say goodnight, just like she hadn't said a word when Noah declared that Tom, the man who had vanished for most of his childhood, was now in charge. She lay there next to me, still as glass, scrolling through her phone. Probably Pinterest. Probably recipes for more dinners I'd cook and pay for but not belong to. Eventually the screen dimmed. Her breathing slowed. I waited until I heard the deep rhythm of sleep. Then I slipped out of bed like a burglar. The house was dark, cold, empty. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort, it accuses. I made my way to the office, sat down in the old leather chair I'd once bought secondhand, then paid to have reupholstered. My hands hovered over the keyboard. For a moment I just stared. Then I opened my laptop. The machine came to life, casting a pale glow against the room. Like a morgue light. Cold. Honest. I opened the first folder. Finances. Lines of numbers. Bank statements. Insurance breakdowns. College tuition schedules. Direct deposit receipts. Recurring payments. Contracts. Every dollar accounted for. Every obligation mine. Tuition. Paid monthly from my account. Dorm housing. Auto-debited from my card. Meal plan, me. Laptop repair protection. My name. Spotify Premium, textbook rentals, 2 subscriptions to services I didn't even recognize, also me. Car insurance. Phone bill. Student health coverage. All of it. My name. My responsibility. Melissa's name? Absent. Tom? He was a ghost. Not even a signature to prove he existed. No footprints, just the occasional mention in Noah's sentences, as if that were enough to grant him authority. That's when the clarity set in. Not anger. Not resentment. Clarity. Everything they took for granted, everything they accessed without a second thought, existed because I hadn't asked questions. Because I had agreed, silently, to be the scaffolding no one acknowledged, useful but invisible. The man they'd climb over to reach the future, but never look down at once they arrived. And for what? Noah didn't want my name, didn't want my guidance, didn't want my authority. He wanted my wallet. Melissa wanted peace, wanted convenience, wanted someone who would stay quiet and keep the lights on, even when she pretended I wasn't part of the room. And I had given them all of that, until that dinner. Until the moment Noah said, without hesitation, that all real decisions went through Tom now. And Melissa, the woman I married, the woman who once asked me to be part of her son's life, confirmed it by doing nothing. That was the moment the contract dissolved. Not legally, but morally. The trust broke. The weight shifted. So I made a decision. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Deliberately. I opened the tab for the university's student portal. Logged in with the credentials I kept saved in a secure file. Passwords Noah never bothered asking me for, because in his mind, these systems didn't belong to anyone. They were just there. Like electricity. Like air. I found the tuition section. Payment status. Upcoming due, January 15th. Balance, $14,820. Next autopay scheduled, December 28th. Visa ending in 1174. My card. I hovered the cursor over the Manage Payment tab. Clicked. Paused the payment. A dialog box appeared. Are you sure you want to cancel the scheduled transaction? I clicked yes. Noah wouldn't find out tonight. He wouldn't notice tomorrow. Maybe not for a few weeks. But the machine he'd relied on, the machine he declared belonged to someone else, was shutting down. One cog at a time. Next, the Health Insurance tab. I navigated to Student Health Plan. Status: active, paid through February. Next renewal, March 1st. Card on file. Again mine. I canceled the renewal. Then the meal plan. And used balance carried over, but no auto-renew this time. Cancelled. Textbook service. Rental auto-renew. Cancelled. Then the credit card linked to his gas app. Frozen. Then the PayPal connected to his college email. Removed. Then the phone line on the family plan. Deactivated. Not cut off, just removed from coverage at the next billing cycle. Not punishment. Correction. Every connection I had quietly maintained for the last 4 years, from the moment he first left for college. I began dismantling piece by piece. Not in anger, in truth. Because if I wasn't consulted, I wouldn't pay. If I wasn't family, I wouldn't sacrifice. If Tom was the decision-maker, Tom could be the financier. Let's see how far the myth stretched. After 2 hours of cancellations, confirmations, and financial amputations, I closed the laptop. It was 4:42 a.m. The house was still quiet. Upstairs, Melissa slept, unaware. Maybe sensing the shift. Maybe dreaming of Arizona vacations and birthday phone calls that wouldn't be followed by invoices. I stood at the window, looked out at the dark street. The mailbox, still bearing my name. The driveway, where Noah had once thrown a tantrum when I told him to change the oil on the car I'd bought him. A house full of things that bore my fingerprints. A family that wouldn't acknowledge them. Let them live in the silence they chose. Let them taste what life feels like when the man they don't respect finally agrees with them. I crawled back into bed just as the sun started bleeding through the blinds. Melissa stirred. I felt her turn toward me, her body brushing mine. She reached out, placed her hand on my chest like she used to. I didn't move. She whispered, "You're up early." I said nothing, because sometimes silence isn't avoidance. It's a verdict. The house was silent when I woke. Not peaceful, just quiet, like the air after a glass breaks. Melissa was already downstairs. I heard the muffled scrape of a chair being pulled from the table, the low hum of the coffee maker. The same sound I had once associated with comfort. Routine. Domestic rhythm. Now it just felt like background noise in a place I didn't belong. I stayed in bed, listening. I knew what was coming. It started at exactly 8:03 a.m. The first ripple. Phone rang. Not mine. From the kitchen, I heard her answer. Soft, polite, confused at first. Then quiet. The kind of silence that says something's wrong. I imagined the conversation in pieces. Hello. Pause. Wait, no, I wasn't aware. Longer pause. That's strange. He's always been on time. A silence. I understand. Yes. I'll look into it. The call ended. I heard her set the phone down. Not gently. Not roughly either. Just the kind of placement that means someone is thinking too hard about how hard to place it. Then came the creak of the stairs. I waited. When the door opened, she didn't step in. She stood in the frame, bathrobe drawn tight, face unreadable. "Michael," she said. I didn't answer. "The school just called," she said. "They said Noah's tuition hasn't been paid. They said the account shows an interrupted autopay." I let that hang. Her eyes narrowed. "Did you do something?" I sat up slowly, swung my legs over the edge of the bed. "I reviewed my obligations," I said. "That's not what I asked. It's the only answer you're getting right now." She stepped into the room, voice rising. "You canceled his tuition?" I met her eyes. "I stopped managing someone else's responsibilities. That's not the same as canceling." Her mouth opened, then closed. She blinked, as if the weight of those words needed time to settle. "Noah's depending on that money," she said finally. "His classes start in 2 weeks. Then maybe he should speak to his father," I said. That was the moment it shifted for her, when she understood that this wasn't a fluke, that the gears had stopped turning because I had taken my hands off the machine. She didn't argue further. She just left the room, quick steps down the hallway, already dialing someone else. Maybe the school, maybe Tom. I didn't follow. I had nothing else to explain. At 9:22 a.m., my phone lit up for the first time. "Noah." I didn't answer. The call ended. 2 seconds later, a text came through. "Why did you cancel tuition? This is serious." Another call. Then another. Voicemail after voicemail stacking like bricks. I muted the phone, set it face down on the desk, opened my email instead. By 10:06, Melissa's messages started arriving. "This isn't okay, Michael. You should have talked to me before doing this. He's panicking. This isn't how adults handle conflict." That one made me laugh. Quietly, bitterly, because conflict was never allowed before. When I tried to raise concerns about how much I was spending, how Noah treated me, how Tom contributed nothing, Melissa always had a phrase at the ready. "Don't start something. It's just a phase. He's figuring it out." But when I stopped funding the illusion, suddenly I was immature. No one asked the real question. No one asked why. At 11:15, Melissa came back upstairs. Her voice had changed. It was controlled now. Not pleading. Managerial. "I've spoken to the university," she said. "They said if payment isn't submitted by the 5th, his registration will be voided. Financial aid won't cover the gap. There'll be penalties." I didn't respond. "So," she continued, "we need to fix this." "No," I said. She blinked. "What do you mean no?" "I mean we don't need to fix anything. It's not my name on the birth certificate. Not my signature on his loyalty. Not my face in his family tree." Melissa folded her arms. "This is about what he said at dinner." "It's about what you didn't say," I replied. She looked away. That was her tell. She only broke eye contact when she knew I was right. "You're punishing him," she said quietly. "I'm reminding him," I corrected, "of how the world works. You can't claim someone isn't family, then expect family-level support." Her voice dropped, nearly a whisper. "Michael, he's just a kid." "No, he's not. He's 18. Old enough to make declarations at the dinner table. Old enough to anoint his real dad as the decision-maker. So let that man pay for his decisions." Melissa didn't answer. She left the room again. That was her move. Never fight too long. Just withdraw. Let the silence do the work. But this time, the silence wasn't hers to control. At noon, Noah called again. I answered. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded. "You didn't even say anything. You can't do this." I spoke calmly. "You said decisions go through your dad now. So go through him." He was quiet for a second. Then he laughed, bitter and short. "He's not gonna pay. You know that. He never has." "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you burned your bridges." His voice cracked. "You're ruining my life." "No," I said. "You did that when you decided I didn't matter." He hung up. By the end of the day, the fallout had reached full circle. Melissa wasn't speaking to me. Noah had started posting on social media. Passive-aggressive quotes, subtweets, *TS of emails from the university with captions like, "Some people think they're making a point but just make a mess." I didn't respond. I didn't care. Let the world know he was facing consequences. Let him cry to friends who didn't know the history. Let him paint me as cold. Unreasonable. Because those who know me, really know me, would understand. This was never about money. It was about erasure. I didn't just stop payments. I stopped pretending I was seen. By the time the sun set the next evening, the hierarchy in the house had changed. Not by negotiation, not by consent, but by gravity. There's a law to these things. You can only rearrange power in words for so long before the real-world weight tips the scale back. And now, with every withdrawal I made, every frozen tuition line, every paused payment, every canceled auto-renew, that weight had shifted. But the people in this house still hadn't adjusted. Not really. They were still operating on old assumptions. That I was bluffing. That I'd fold. That this was just a tantrum in slow motion. They thought they knew me. They didn't. Noah came home that night, drove back from campus 2 days early, said it was because he needed time to regroup. But I knew what it was. He was afraid. The school had emailed again. This time they'd used words like account hold and scheduling lockout. Things that don't sound threatening until they're printed on official letterhead with dates and deadlines. He walked through the front door like a man trying to pretend he still lived here. Backpack on, phone in hand, expression tight with frustration dressed up as confidence. I didn't get up. I didn't greet him. I stayed seated in the living room, feet flat on the floor, hands clasped. Waiting. Melissa followed behind him. She hadn't spoken more than 2 sentences to me all day. Noah dropped his bag by the stairs. "We need to talk." I nodded. "We do." He sat across from me. Melissa hovered near the doorway, unsure which side of the room she belonged to. "I called Dad," Noah said, voice level, rehearsed. "He's going to see what he can do." I waited. "But," he continued, and here his voice started to slip. He said it's going to take time. Like he's not ready to just cover things. I said nothing. "So I figured maybe you could just pay this one term. Just this one. So things don't fall apart. So I can stay on track. I mean, it's not like," he paused. "It's not like we haven't been through worse." That last sentence almost made me laugh. We hadn't been through worse. I had, alone. The hospital bills when Melissa's mother fell. The furnace that died mid-January. The time Noah cracked the car window and blamed a rock. Then posted a Snapchat of his friend kicking it open. I had covered every disaster. And now he spoke of shared hardship, like we'd stood in the storm together. I leaned forward. "No." He blinked. "What?" "No," I said again. "You don't get to fire me on Monday and ask for a favor on Thursday." His voice rose. "I didn't fire you." "Yes, you did," I replied. "You said all real decisions go through your dad. That means the one who pays is him now. That's what you decided. I'm just following orders." Melissa finally stepped forward. "Michael, come on." "No." I cut her off, eyes never leaving Noah. "This is about responsibility. If I'm not your father when it comes to respect, I'm not your father when it comes to finances." He shifted in his seat. "But this is school. This is serious. It's not just some Netflix password or gas money. I'll fall behind." "Then you should have thought of that," I said, "before you declared me obsolete." His face flushed. "I didn't mean it like that." "You meant it exactly like that," I said. "That's the problem." Melissa crossed her arms. "We should be working together on this." I turned to her, slow and deliberate. "You nodded at the table, Melissa. You didn't argue. You didn't push back. You accepted his terms. That was your choice. Now this is mine." She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Her body language folded inward. Noah stood abruptly. "This is messed up." I shrugged. "No, this is math. You pulled one pillar out of the structure, and the roof collapsed. That's not cruelty. That's physics." He stormed out. Not up the stairs, not into the kitchen. Out the front door. Slammed it hard enough to shake the windows. Melissa didn't follow him. She just looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time in years. "You're really not going to pay?" she asked. I didn't answer, because by now she should have known. By the next morning, the power dynamics had fully inverted. Noah's phone calls increased, to the school, to his father, to whoever might lend him money or tell him what he wanted to hear. He walked through the house with headphones in, talking too loudly, as if volume might make the facts change. "I don't know, man. Maybe it's a glitch. Like, the payment didn't go through, but I didn't cancel it, you know? Lies. I think my stepdad's just mad about something. He'll fix it." Delusion. The house started to feel like a ship taking on water. Noah grew more frantic. Melissa quieter. I stayed still. At noon, Melissa tried again. "Michael, we can work this out. You helped him get this far, don't throw it away now." I looked at her. "Who's we?" She flinched. "You keep saying we like I wasn't cut out of this picture already," I said. "You and Noah made a decision. This is the result. You don't get to rewrite it now just because the math doesn't work in your favor." She lowered her voice. "He's young. He's old enough to dismiss me publicly. He's old enough to make adult declarations. So he's old enough for adult consequences." Her eyes glistened. "You don't mean that." "I do," I said. "I just didn't know I meant it until you stayed silent at the table." She sat down then, at the edge of the couch, hands in her lap, not touching mine. "I didn't know what to say," she whispered. "That was the problem," I said. "You always know what to say when it protects him. You always find the words. Just never when it's me that's bleeding." Tears ran down her face. Quiet. Clean. But I didn't reach for her. Because this wasn't about pain. This was about clarity. And clarity had arrived, finally. Like a verdict read aloud in a silent courtroom. By Friday, Noah stopped pretending. He cornered me in the hallway, voice low, desperate. "They're giving me a week," he said. 7 days before my classes are dropped. I talked to the bursar's office. "They're not kidding. I can't register for anything. I'll lose my spot. I'll have to reapply for housing." I nodded. "Please," he said. "Just this once. After that, I'll handle it. I swear." I studied him. The slump of his shoulders. The sweat at his temple. The sudden switch from arrogance to panic. He didn't look like a man anymore. He looked like a child in a man's clothes. I thought about all the years I'd covered for him. Paid for his mistakes. Quieted the messes. Absorbed the disrespect like it was weather. Then I thought about how it felt to hear him say those words at dinner. Words spoken like they were already agreed upon because they were. Words Melissa didn't correct. Words I couldn't forget. I stepped aside. He looked at me, confused. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To the garage," I said. "I need to check the generator." "That's it?" he asked. "You're not going to say anything?" I paused. Turned back. "I've already said everything I needed to," I told him. "Now I'm just watching." And I walked away.